Hello everybody, welcome to this session of integrating data quality control as part of your web applications. My name is Shankar Chandrasekharan. I'm a software development lead with Data Reviewer team. We're going to talk about the ArcGIS Data Reviewer's web capabilities as well as how to go about using data quality control services as part of ArcGIS Data Reviewer server. Before I move ahead, I wanted to just generally ask how many of you guys have used, can you get a show of hands for how many of you have used Data Reviewer or heard about Data Reviewer? It's a good number of folks have already used it, so we got a good mix. So I'll talk about what is ArcGIS Data Reviewer in ArcGIS platform. We'll talk about automated review and semi-automated review, the two forms of data quality review that we have tools for in ArcGIS Data Reviewer. We're also going to talk about how to analyze and report data quality as part of a transparent system so you can actually establish to your stakeholders the quality of data at any point in time. Finally, I'll wrap up with some references and resources that you can use to get started on Reviewer. So before I dwell into what is ArcGIS Data Review for Data Reviewer, let's understand what are the different capabilities that are available in the ArcGIS platform. You have the basic geodatabase integrity checks like schema constraints and additional geoprocessing tools, as well as versioning to do a step-by-step data ingest into the system, as well as some advanced data type rules like topology rules, utility network rules, and parcel fabric. These tools will help you establish a very good baseline for a high quality data. By extending ArcGIS Data Reviewer as part of this stack, what you can achieve is provide a streamlined workflow for data ingest on a regular basis and provide automated rules that can be established at once and then executed as many number of times as part of the data ingest process. It also provides you a good mechanism to understand the life cycle of an issue, starting from discovery of the problem as well as managing those life cycle and report them in a very transparent way. So what is ArcGIS Data Reviewer in different pieces of the platform? So Data Reviewer is used by most of you guys as part of desktop as an extension to both ArcGIS Pro as well as ArcMap. For deploying it as part of the web services, we have ArcGIS Server as a server object extension, Data Reviewer Server as an ArcGIS Server object extension. It's available in standard or higher licensing. But we're going to talk about those data quality services today. So for developers, we have the ArcGIS JavaScript API, which is shipped along with the JavaScript API itself. So we have some tasks which we will look at in the demonstration today. For the pro side of it, we have add-ins, we have SDK for the pro add-ins development. For non-developers, we have a growing list of web app builder widgets that you can take advantage of and configure it in the fashion that you want within your organization. So before I get into the demonstration, I wanted to generally talk about what I'm trying to demonstrate as part of by using Data Reviewer services. As an organization, I need to improve the emergency response system, and for which I need to provide high quality data. So we're going to build an application which will streamline the workflow or data ingest process by different contributors. So I have different contributors contributing data to the organization. So as you can see in the image, I have a address parcel data like address polygon and some driveway entrance points. So contributors will be collecting driveway entrance points, site address points, and parcel polygons and submitting to the organization in a very transparent way. So some of the success criteria I've identified here are streamlining the data collection process by providing a data ingest mechanism for the contributors, being able to actually ensure that required attributes as well as spatial integrity of the features that have been collected are maintained correctly based on pre-established rules. Additionally, the organization will actually have field crew go into the system and look at the data that's been collected to ensure they have positionally accurate as well as all the features are collected based on data completeness. Finally, how to actually demonstrate or provide those error feedback back to the contributors and summarized and look at the status of those issues at any point in time from a stakeholder's perspective. So that drives us into the first section of the demo, which is automated review. So the different types of checks that we have in Data Reviewer can be classified into four broad categories. The first one is to evaluate the attributes of your data. There are different checks like SQL checks, domain subtypes, and regular expression checks to ensure data attribution are populated correctly. A good example would be to ensure all your facilities you're collecting as part of data collection process need to have a certain format of your facility ID, and you can configure a rule to ensure that it will happen. The next thing is provide a lot of feature integrity checks. So a feature, when it's been collected or digitized, has to have a certain set of relationship to additional features, or they should be connected, and if they are not connected, identify them as a dangling feature that you want to report back. A more detailed spatial relationship would be a spatial relationship between two different features or across feature classes, where you want to ensure any feature that is being collected is within or contains or within a certain spatial relationship across other features, both spatially as well as combined with attribute side of it. For example, you can actually check if address entrance points or address site address points are within an address parcel, and both the address point IDs that you have defined attribution wise match correctly. So that provides you a good way to define spatial relationships as well as combined with attribute validation in one go. The last piece that we have as part of automated review checks is a metadata check, which allows you to evaluate the metadata content as well as a standard of review of your data. So there are various standard schemas that are available as part of metadata, which you can use to evaluate as well as provide custom content validation that you can do with this metadata check. So as part of the first demonstration, what we are going to do is, as an organization, we have some business needs to have high quality data. So we're going to establish some rules, and those rules will be translated as functional requirements. So once those functional requirements are defined as either reviewer batch jobs as part of the ArcGIS desktop workflow, or can be defined as ArcGIS rules as part of ArcGIS Pro. Once you have those rules established, then you can define a web portal like a contributor portal, where you can run automated validation as the contributor provides data, and then once the data is provided, you can run an automated validation and provide back feedback to the users as errors. So that drives us into the first demonstration. So here I have a just 1 second. Think so. Try to. Okay, sorry about that. So here I have an application, just a simple application built with Data Reviewer quality control services. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to log in as a contributor, team A. So as you see, I mean, there is a bunch of widgets available. I have the city of Naperville data here with some address entrance points collected, configured. What I'm going to do is, as a contributor to this portal, I'm going to come in and I have a widget, Dojo widget here configured, which has some updates. So I'm going to update my, provide my data ingest as a zipped file database. So provide some description and some date reference. And then I'm going to attach my mobile data that have been collected on the field. It contains some site address points, driveway entrance points, as well as some parcel data, some address polygons. I'm going to go ahead and submit it back to the system, so the automated validation of those rules can be triggered behind the scene. So as that is happening, right, what I would like to do is look at the overall architecture as part of that quick demonstration. So what we did was we used ArcGIS Data Reviewer's JavaScript web APIs to connect to the REST API to trigger an automated validation. In this case, you can either schedule a job or execute a job. In this case, I scheduled an ad hoc job or executed an ad hoc job, and it actually interacted with my server object extension or the ArcGIS Data Reviewer server service, which will then access the data and trigger a validation on that data. Once the data has been validated, it returns results back to the results reviewer results workspace, and then I provide back a bunch of execution details. Based on the progress of that job, I can return back a bunch of results by querying back the results workspace. So just to briefly get into the code here, I'm going to highlight the key pieces here. We're going to have we have the general JavaScript require statements. The key things here to note here are the batch validation task and the batch validation parameters. These are classes that you have to require to ensure that you can actually execute a job. The first thing that we do is, as we logged into the system, we actually got the user information and logged them to write into a specific session. Once we got that information, then we got the uploaded zipped file JDatabase that he provided, and then got that information and got it as a file JDatabase. Once I have the file JDatabase, I configured those properties as part of batch validation parameters. And when I did that, I configured an organization-based configured batch job, which ran behind the scene and actually returned back some issues. So as the batch job was running, it was checking the progress and reporting the progress as you go in the application. So as we did that, once the progress is done, as the job progressed and completed, we can go back, I populate the grid. So I can go back and see if it actually is done. So as you can see, the results came back after execution. The user contributor can quickly look at them. So the next part of I just wanted to go back to the demo scenario we started talking about. The first part of the demo was being able to, the three things that we actually outlined here were streamlining the data flow process by building an application so that users can provide in a structured manner, provide data. I also had validation rules established to actually ensure attributes are corrected and spatial integrity of the data is accurately done. So the next part I just wanted to briefly talk about is a semi-automated review. In the semi-automated review, the importance of visual reviewing of data. So as an organization, I want my field crew to go into the field and look at whether the data collected is accurate enough. So how do we do it is how we're going to talk about here. What it helps as part of the visual review process is to discover any patterns of data collection where there is going to be issues. There's also the aspect of comparing with a trusted source like an imagery data, or also find issues with data completeness like finding missing features. So I wanted to get into the demonstration quickly. I have a similar application here, very similar application called field evaluation. I'm going to log in as part of the organization field tech crew. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to quickly, as a field tech, before I get into the field, I'm going to run a quick sample. So this is basically getting a sample of the data that has been collected by the contributor. What it does is basically triggers a validation job behind the scene, and it goes ahead and executes the validation against the sample data that's been provided by the contributor. Once it gets that information, then it gets a subset of the sample based on various criteria I've established in the sampling check. The sampling check basically defines different confidence level as well as different weightage to different feature classes that you are evaluating. So depending, I have site address points, driveway entrance points, as well as some address parcels. So what I've done is basically collect some samples, and based on the samples, I can go and look at them on the field as I go through them and evaluate whether the driveway entrance point is accurately documented. If it is documented, I can go ahead and mark the status as passed or failed here. So here I have some new records, so I can look at them and see if the entrance points are accurately defined based on the imagery data here. So they seem to be accurate, so I can go ahead and mark the status as passed. So what this does is updates the status of the sample, saying this is a good sample, or this is a correct sample. So as I can see, I can go and look at a bunch of other driveway entrance points or site address points and identify if there are issues with those errors and if there are any problems with that. If they are good, we can mark them as pass or fail here. So as part of the process of evaluating those things when I drive through and find those issues, I can also find issues with respect to data completeness. So here, if you see the imagery, there is a driveway entrance point that needs to be marked here, but it's incorrectly marked in this location. So the driveway entrance point should be here. So what I can do is report a feedback as this is a missing or a positional error. So what I can do is I can configure it and say entrance point is incorrectly be positioned. So I can say it's a positional error. And I can define a severity to the problem and report it back to the organization. So this way, this information can then be taken back to the contributor and provided feedback so he can collect the data accurately. So that's kind of what I wanted to show as part of the semi-automated review. Going back to what we just did, basically we used so we got a sample from the contributor data. We ran a bunch of samples using a validation service. Once we ran the samples, we took that as part of a field crew effort to report problems back to the results. We also updated the status of it saying passed or failed and flagged it as either a problem or not. And then we wrote it back to the reviewer. Once we wrote it, the information can then be propagated to the contributor so he can take a look at it and fix those issues. Briefly driving down into the code. So what we have is the key things here are the results task and the life cycle, which will help you update the life cycle of an issue or report a problem. So we got a sample by running the same batch validation, pointing to a sampling check. And then once we got a result to be updated as pass or fail, we updated it using the update lifecycle status called review results task.update lifecycle status. We also reported a missing feature or a positional error with the feature by using the results task again. In that case, what we did was we have populated a bunch of attributes like the severity or the actual problem that you have, and then reported it back using review results tasks write result. So as part of the demo scenario, the two pieces that we did solve as part of this demonstration was being able to positionally verify the accuracy of the data as well as data completeness of that features that have been collected. The last piece that we want to dwell into is report and analyze data quality. So in this process, one of the things that we want to understand is the different ways you can actually summarize information or results that you have as part of validation. So you can summarize these issues as key performance indicators. Some of them are how these errors are co-located, spatially co-located based on different geographical extent. We can also find what are the severity level of each of those issues identified. We can summarize by the type of issues you find in the data. We can also summarize issues based on the type of data that you have in your data model. The last one that we also could do is basically manage the life cycle of that issue by identifying whether the issue has been reviewed, fixed, or verified during this process. So in order to understand the results more, you want to understand what a reviewer result is. Review results are nothing but features or rows created in the results workspace. It provides information about the error, error, as well as more information about the configured rule that caused that error. Some of the things that we get from validation are written as results into the reviewer workspace, and they can be demonstrated or displayed back as a tabular format using pages of data, as well as identifying and sorting and grouping those records. We can also demonstrate or summarize that results using dashboard, which we're going to see as part of the demonstration. So I have the same contributor portal where the user team A is logged in, the person who actually contributed original data to the system. So his data has been uploaded here. You see those driveway entrance points that have been marked here that have been contributed. What we can do is go into the dashboard, which is a small widget that I created, which is using the dashboard aspect of Data Reviewer. So here I can filter my results and display them as charts, as pie charts or bar charts. I can also spatially group those results and do a spatial extent. Here I'm going to look at all the results at this point, and I'm going to group it based on severity. So as you can see, you can quickly build a summary of those severity. You have 89 issues reported for the data that's been uploaded. There's about 14 severity 1 issues. So if I want to look at the details, like click on the severity 1 issues, I can go into the actual results by accessing the results from the results workspace. So here I can go and navigate to each of the result and see what the problems are. So if I look at missing site address points here, so here you have an address parcel which doesn't have a site address point, and it's been identified or flagged as an error because one of the rules that we have established is to collect both information accurately. So as you can see, you can quickly navigate to these things, and as the contributor, I can go and say, I have fixed this issue by providing a new data upload. And I can do that by, once I have fixed the issue, I can select that and update that and mark the status of that issue by saying resolved and providing my information. So what this does is basically updates the life cycle of that error, and then you can look at the error in that process. So it's been in the review resolve phase. So you can also go back and verify it and provide it as a verification. So going back to the filters, what I wanted to also highlight is the different lifecycle status that you can have errors by. So you can go and select lifecycle status and look at the different lifecycle status the errors are. Since we resolved only one issue, right now it's showing up as resolved, and the other ones are still in review state. What I also wanted to show you guys is the last piece of this demonstration, where I'm going to log in as an organization administrator. Sorry. So here what I do is basically log in as an administrator, and then I can look at all the different contributors' results by grouping them by different sessions. So here you can see that I have different contributors who are contributing to the data. We also have the organization's field crew who go around looking at positional accuracy or data completeness and report them as problems. So as you can see, I can look at team B's work and see how they have performed and how many of those issues have been fixed and resolved as part of this process. So this gives a very quick and transparent way from a stakeholder's perspective to understand the quality of a data at any point in time. So briefly looking at one last aspect of the code, which is the dashboard task. So what we have is we have the dashboard task that is being used as part of summarizing these issues. We also use the results task to display those errors. And we provided some query parameters. So basically what we do is we create a dashboard, we ask the dashboard results based on the specific criteria like severity or feature class or the session name. And based on that, we got some results back, and we demonstrate or display that data as part of a Dojo JavaScript chart. What we also did was display the results by using those results task as well as some results query parameters, where we set what is my sorting and what is my what are the different fields I want to display in that results pane in the grid, and then provided a page number as well as page size, so you can get appropriate number of results. And you can apply the same filters you applied at the summary level for the dashboard into the results to get the information. So the last piece I wanted to visit here was the summarization of the errors, how they have been corrected and verified as part of this demonstration. Just to summarize the overall architecture, what I have is we have 3 or 4 different functionality stacks. We have the batch validation REST service in Data Reviewer, which allows you to either schedule a job or do an ad hoc job, which triggers a validation service, a geoprocessing service, to access the data and write results back to Reviewer workspace. We can also do visual review using subject matter experts can mark issues. As we saw, a missing feature could be marked from the field crew. So once they are reported back to the system, they can be used to summarize information and provide it back to the users, as well as provide detailed information using reviewer results in a tabular or a grid format. Last, I wanted to come up with what are the different documentations you have, so you can take that and get started with Data Reviewer. We have the documentation for desktop in ArcGIS for desktop. We have both for ArcGIS Pro and ArcGIS ArcMap. We also have documentation for the data quality services that we demonstrated today as part of the ArcGIS Enterprise website. You have some tutorials. We also have starter applications that you can take advantage of. You have some trainings that are available at the training.esri.com. Some of them are seminars, some of them are instructor-led as well as web courses. And then we have a place at GeoNet where you can actually provide your feedback and comments. Thank you everybody for attending this demo theater. Please visit the Esri Events app to provide us your feedback of this session and what are the things you would like to see going forward. So it provides you a bunch of, you can find the session by looking for the name of the session, and then you can provide some questions and then provide feedback by submitting it. Have any questions? Thank you.